Hey, welcome to Conversations with my dear friend, Jeff Conway. My name is Susan. This is A Different Kind of Walk. Well, how are you?
I am I am good.
You want to give a really quick health update?
Yeah. So health update really quick. I am going in for another throat procedure tomorrow, but they knocked me out, but they're just looking. I wasn't going to let them do anything to me, but they want to look and see why I flunked my swallowing test. So after what they did to me this summer. So yeah.
So, like in the summer, they cut out something that the sphincter that blocked any sort of food going down, correct? And you failed after that? Like it
Yeah,
didn't
the
work.
food is stopping kind of in the same area, and drink is stopping in the same area. So I think it's just what it is. And
You have a hairball caught in your pipe?
oh my gosh, I think of cats. We had some cats in that sound.
Well, my family's very hairy, so literally I am the one who has to like put the snakes down the pipes and pull all the hair out of our pipes in order.
Oh.
So that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, no, no. So I am calm right now with my body. Turning 65, I have been denied benefits with two of my medicines. They don't accept coupons anymore for new expensive drugs when you turn 65. I'll invite anybody out there in the healthcare community, government, whatever, to try to answer that question for me. Um,
So then it takes medications from like 35 bucks up to like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds per month, like that sort of thing.
yes. So we sent in the request for it to be examined, and both were denied. And the main one that was denied is the pain medicine that slowly releases over 12 hours. Doesn't cause the big fuzziness, doesn't cause addiction, doesn't, all these good things about this drug. And yeah, that's the only challenge there.
I'm sorry,
Um,
Jeff.
yeah, but I am fantastic because today is the Monday after the Saturday when Oregon beat Penn State in the Big Ten championship. So we're ending the regular season as the number one football team, and they've created this bracket for the first time of 12 teams doing a playoff for the national championship. And some people say it would have been better for Oregon to lose because they would have had a better path to win. But I like what the coach said. When we supposedly have a harder way to beat all these strong teams to win the championship. The coach said it's never supposed to be easy to win the championship. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's fun. That made me happy. That's a first in Oregon history. I'm pretty sure it has to be. Happy second or third week of Advent.
Yeah, you too.
And what
You
do you guys do for Advent? Do you bring
Yeah.
Advent into the service?
We do, yeah. So Advent was not something I knew about growing up, but at my church now, we do the traditional Advent wreath with the four candles counting down the weeks until Christmas. And we do Old Testament and New Testament readings and prayers each week with it. Sometimes there's even more, but those are kind of the bare bones.
So interesting. but not me knowing your background. I'm not as surprised, but it was still interesting to hear that Advent was not a part of your childhood, but that would be really common for many Protestants of a certain age.
To not know it.
Yeah. So Advent, Lent, Good Friday, none of those were a part of my first Presbyterian church experience in inner city Boston.
Hmm.
Um, very few of those were a part of my first Presbyterian church in Pennsylvania. So, for a lot of people, those are the kind of things that Catholics do.
Mm-hmm.
Protestants don't do them. For some people, they didn't want to look Catholic in any kind of way as the Presbyterian Church was formed, as they were trying to create worship patterns. This is all in Scotland. There was a huge debate whether Presbyterian Church would use the Lord's Prayer in worship because the
Really?
Catholics used it. And they
Wow.
didn't, so they were moving away from various parts of Catholic theology and Catholic worship. And I loved reading. And this was notes from a meeting of the synod, which would have been a larger part of the presbyteries all coming together, reading the notes of somebody standing up and saying, um, it is a part of scripture, and we do focus on scripture. Oh, that they had debates and divisions all the way back to that is
Mhm.
intriguing to me.
Hey, so let's do a quick history recap before we move on. If we go all the way back to the early 1500s, when the Catholic Church practically ruled the Western world, and over time it had started doing some pretty funky, corrupt things, there were people who tried to reform it from within. And when that didn't work, if they lived through it, they ended up breaking off and trying to pursue God outside of the Catholic Church, which is where you get Protestants, Christians who protested to the corruption within the Catholic Church at the time. At this point, the term has come to just mean any Christian who isn't Catholic. Now, despite the fact that Jesus says, love your enemy, turn the other cheek, murder is wrong, oftentimes when one Christian group split off from another back then, it ended in large amounts of bloodshed and persecution. So you can imagine why, then, if you fast forward to my childhood, I heard Christians say that Catholics aren't Christian. The Catholic Church is a cult, that those guys are the bad guys. Um, Jeff, so you mentioned that people were very intentionally trying not to be Catholic. And as such, they got rid of all of these holy days and special feasts and seasons throughout the year because that's what Catholics do, and they're not
The
Christian.
stained glass, even
Yep. Yeah,
um,
the
in
way
many traditions, that they broke so much stained glass in those old churches. Ah,
yes, the stained glass, the statues, the architecture, all of it. They left all of that behind. Yeah, the separation was very clear. We're not doing that thing.
so they didn't want to participate in this beautiful liturgical calendar that takes you from looking forward to the coming of the Messiah, to the birth, to Epiphany, to Lent, to Easter, to Pentecost. So, the calendar is put together in beautiful ways that help a person journey. And in following that, in a year, a person would have gone through the whole cycle of not only the life of Christ, but the actions of God towards humanity. And that was the purpose for it. So I think once some Protestant churches started to pay attention to that in leadership, and it probably happened in the seminaries also, that had different traditions coming together and pastors or future pastors going, wow, I really like that. That wasn't a part of my childhood, but I'd like to bring that to my service. So these are not new things. People might look back on us and go, what? 100, 200 years from now. But
Yeah, these rhythms might seem a bit strange, but they're definitely not new. Christians have been doing this for over 1,000 years. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I told you I've been becoming more curious about Mary, particularly in the past year.
Hmm.
And do you know what I text you? I text you, do Roman Catholics was her too clean? Did you understand what that was?
Wash
What I
is
meant to
where.
say was, do Roman Catholics wash her too clean? Do Protestants leave her unnoticed in the dirty laundry? I guess that was me trying to be poetic or something, but I'm curious about Mary. And I think I'm curious in the way that you did not grow up with Advent as a part of your worship in childhood. I didn't grow up in any worship tradition at all. Then going to Gordon Conwell and loving my time there, but I learned nothing about Mary.
Mhm.
Probably the only thing I learned about Mary was that Catholics worshiped her. And
Mm.
um, did you spend any time thinking about Mary at all? And I don't want to be sexist here. We're boy girl, but is it different for a woman? I don't know. Have you thought about Mary
Mm.
earlier?
So, yes, growing up, Mary was not a prominent figure compared to all the other stories that I knew. She shows up in the Christmas time nativity story. I frequently saw depictions of her very pregnant and riding on a donkey traveling to Bethlehem. But then the baby's born, and it's all about Jesus from then on. I don't remember a lot of focus on her words in the story growing up. And in high school, um, I did learn the Magnificat, the "My soul magnifies the Lord," that whole response of hers, but that was in a school choir, not church. I'm not even sure that I connected it with Mary in particular. So focus on her really at all was downplayed. But yeah, I still feel like I don't have much of an understanding of the Catholic view of Mary. So I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Well, and I'm not the expert on it. But I am curious about it. So in learning what the rosary is, and you hear people saying, "Oh, I had to say a bunch of Hail Marys."
Hmm.
And you can turn and be funny and think of Whoopi Goldberg in Sister Act doing Hail Mary stuff. Or you hear Hail Mary and think, oh my gosh, they are worshiping her
Hmm.
because of those words. And what I found as I've learned the different parts of the rosary is that it is that invitation for Mary to pray for us
Hmm.
and to lift us to Jesus, to be on the journey with us. As Hebrews tells us that there are a cloud of witnesses that are there enveloping us. So Mary's a part of that cloud of witness, and they particularly focus on Mary.
Hmm.
Now, can people look at it and say it's Mary? It's Mary worship. Can people who are Catholics who may not have a lot of training, may not have paid attention a whole lot, they think that they're worshiping Mary in the midst of that? Yes, I think they could. Is that what it's about? No, I don't think it is. Um,
Mm,
where I do find challenge, and I'm trying not to let this push me learning more about Mary, is that from what I'm understanding, Catholic theology says that Mary was without sin, that for Jesus to be
hmm
born, the second Adam without sin, Mary had to be without sin. And that makes no sense to me, even as I'm paying attention to Catholic prayers that lift up Mary in the fear, in the questioning. Just even that right there, no, she's not God. She had to ponder things, she had to work through things, she had to listen to God through things. That's what I'm discovering with Mary. And so I don't see that person being sinless, and I don't understand why Mary has to be washed, not was,
hmm
washed so clean. I don't quite understand that. I don't know how that could ever change in my theology. And to me, I think I'm coming to the journey late of walking with Mary and paying attention to Mary after being a pastor for so long, after being in this chair now long enough. She is awe-inspiring for me. She is feelings that I can't express about my relationship with God. And, she's why we started this podcast also. It's putting pain right next to joy and walking with that together. And
hmm
maybe that's part of the draw of the journey for me now.
Mm, nice. Well, I've admitted that I know very little about Catholic theology, and my childhood held very little room for spotlighting Mary since I'm not Catholic. But I did get a degree in theology in undergrad, and I've been in just about every type of church imaginable since then. So I've spent a little more time considering her over the past 20 years than I did growing up. And when I look back now, both as a female and a Protestant, especially at this time of year, I think it can be rewarding to see her in the prominent role that she does play. What's fascinating, and I just read an essay on her, and I think I agree with it, is that Mary plays the role of accessible example, both to all people, all everyday people, but also to me in particular. So if I remember back to what it was like to be in high school or middle school, high school, since that's the age that people think Mary would have been when the angel appeared to her, I do feel camaraderie with her. Mary was poor. She was young. She, we can cut this out if we need to, but she was a sex object. Like, as a female, she had worth based on whether she could be married off and whether she could produce children.
Children, yeah,
And as such, she was someone who, if she were to be found with child, aside from her husband, she would have been horribly dishonored and rejected and probably remained in abject poverty for the rest of her life. Like, in general, women couldn't own property at this time, they couldn't be educated, they couldn't hold jobs. And that is a really terrifying situation to find yourself in. And when the angel shows up and tells her this plan that she is going to bear a child, and it's likely that no one will believe her that it's the Son of God, not the result of some inappropriate affair, she doesn't freak out and say, no, thank you. She just seemingly calmly and with joy says, yes, I'll do it. Let it be to me as you have said. Let me be this vessel for this incredible story that God is writing.
And there's the awe part for me that I was talking about.
Mhm. And then there are moments that I can anticipate relating to her. Like, there are many people whose children die before they do. And like Mary, they have to bury those children and experience that grief. And then there's the simple fact of her circumstances. As far as we know, she never became wealthy. She was always just a normal person who went to weddings with her family and went to temple and was a part of her community. So, in all of this, in the ways that I already relate to her and the ways yet to come, she remains this faithful example of what it looks like to entrust your life to God. And I mean, you talked about being washed too clean or whatnot. You know, at some point, people fought for the idea that Jesus was 100% fully human and 100% fully God, this impossible paradox that is part of Christian doctrine. And in order for Jesus to be fully human and go out into the wilderness and be tempted by Satan and truly wrestle with sin, the possibility that he could sin has to be there, at least in my mind. Like he doesn't. He chooses not to walk away from the ways of God. But that possibility is also what makes him relatable or relate to us. And like the fact that God becomes infleshed and walks among us and experiences all the things that we experience and can have empathy and compassion for us, all of that matters. And it wouldn't be there if his human mother wasn't just a normal human.
So, yeah, you're not living in that Mary was sinless herself realm by imagining that and asking those questions,
No.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to what you were saying about the Hail Marys and all of that in the Rosary and learning that that Catholics worshiped Mary. So in college, I visited an Eastern Orthodox church consistently for a time, and they were an introduction for me to that cloud of witnesses that you were talking about because they had icons up all over the place, these images of different saints from the Bible or throughout history. And the idea, as I came to understand it, imagine that those who have gone before us have passed on, but you can still access them. They can still hear you. And so when we are going to pray, we can invite them to join us in those prayers because honestly, I think so we feel like we're not alone, and because the prayers of many are powerful. But that was my first experience of like, oh, icons, they're not making gods of people and they're not idolatry. They are, in the simplest form, if I like to think that though my grandmother passed away, she is still watching over me, if I like to think about that, then at any point I can chat with her and say, Grandma, can you pray for me about this? And that is very sweet and very meaningful.
And that's a huge step
Hmm.
beyond basic Protestant theology and
Hmm.
connection. That, what
Yeah.
you just said there, for some people would sound really strange. And
Mhm.
for others that have found comfort in remembering and recognizing that that cloud of witnesses is there.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that's beautiful. So yeah, so I would encourage people this Advent season, this Christmas season, whatever your tradition is and wherever your heart is taking you, to really take some time and ponder. That's a good word from Mary. And Mary pondered these things in her heart. She took some time and she listened and she thought. And it doesn't mean we're creating a new theological package, but whether you're pondering a situation or you're pondering the life of a person like Mary or Joseph or Zachariah or Elizabeth or just whoever you might take some time to just sit with, I encourage you to do that this Christmas season, as I am trying to do with Mary, as I'm a hybrid pagan, Presbyterian, Episcopalian, Catholic person. From the traditions of my life, that I've learned something in each one of those traditions.
Mm.
Very much so.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I've never tried to put that together. I am a Baptist, pagan, Eastern Orthodox, Jewish, progressive Mennonite. All of these disparate traditions that are kind of opposed to each other all at the same time.
Uh, but they're opposed, and they're not because their growth, their personality, and it doesn't mean when you move from one to the other that you're moving to a higher plane than you were before. Like that tradition's totally wrong and this one is totally right, but that it matches personal connection and curiosity to seek and listen and see what happens.
Thanks for joining us for A Different Kind of Walk. Until next time, live well.